For number 25, just like all the others, we're going to factor the denominators, determine our LCD, determine our restrictions. X is not allowed to equal 0, and X is not allowed to equal -1. Multiplying both sides of the equation by our LCD, we can see this entire denominator cancels, so we have 1 times 5. The entire LCD multiplied by 1, and then minus, this denominator cancels, and we get just -1. Gathering, getting rid of parentheses, distributing this x to both terms, we get x times x is x squared, x times 1 is x, and we can see we have quadratic, linear, and constant, so we're going to have to gather all the terms to one side, and we get 0 equals x squared plus x minus 6. Well, this polynomial factors as x times x is x squared, 3 times 2 is 6, positive 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, and then 3 minus 2 is 1, so we have x minus 2 equals 0, and x plus 3 equals 0, so we find that x is equal to 2, and x is equal to -3. And neither one of those are restrictions, and so we are done. Number 26, our final problem, is we can see our LCD is n minus 2, which means we only have one restriction on what n can be. So we see if n equals 2, it's going to make the denominator 0, and so the restriction would be n is not allowed to equal 2. When we take n minus 2 and multiply it by all three terms, all three fractions I should say, this n minus 2 cancels and we get 1 times 1 is 1. This n minus 2 cancels, and so we have 1 times this numerator plus, and then this n minus 2 gets multiplied by the 3n minus 2. And we'll do that in this next step. So the next step is always, once we've gotten rid of the fractions, it's to get rid of the parentheses. And so we're going to go ahead and FOIL this out. 3n times n is 3n squared. 3n times negative 2 is negative 6n. Negative 2 times n is negative 2n. And then we have negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Gathering all the like terms on the right-hand side, we have n squared here, and we have a 3n squared. So that's 4n squared. And then gathering all the n terms, all the linear terms. We have a negative 2n, a negative 6n, and a negative 2n. Negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8. Negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10, so we have negative 10n. And then finally we have the other terms would be the constants. Negative 3 and a positive 4 is a positive 1. And so that means that we're going to go ahead and gather all the terms to one side, but notice when we subtract 1 from both sides, the left side becomes 0, and the 1 and the negative 1 cancel each other out, and all we're left with is a 4n squared minus 10n equals 0. Well, we have two terms here, so we don't factor using the one binomial times the other binomial like we've done in many of the other problems. Here we just factor out a common factor. So we're going to factor out, we see that 2n goes into both terms, and we're left with 2n minus 5. And when you set each factor equal to 0, 2n equals 0 or 2n minus 5 equals 0, we find that n equals 0, and n equals, adding 5 and dividing by 2, we get n equals 5 halves. Neither one is a restriction, so those are the two answers.